As it becomes increasingly unlikely that either of the federal cases against Donald Trump will make it to trial before the election, comedian and political commentator Bill Maher dropped multiple truth bombs in a scorching monologue, which exposed the double standards that have been tolerated or created by Democrats, which hurt Democrats and help Republicans, and we have to talk about it. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bell before you go. I'd greatly appreciate it. All right, friends, this is my second video about the most recent episode of Real Time with Bill Maher, because there was actually a lot of good content in it. And probably the best part of the episode was Bill Maher's new rule segment, which was about Attorney General Merrick Garland, and at a broader level, the double standard which Democrats have helped create or exacerbate, which hurts them and helps Donald Trump and the Republicans. And it was like catnip to me because it's stuff that we've talked about before, but I think Bill Maher, in this monologue, put it very, very well. So we're going to play some of these clips and unpack them together. And the first clip actually has to do not with the justice system per se, but actually about a double standard created by Republicans, which Democrats have seemingly tolerated, regarding the Supreme Court, because it is relevant to Merrick Garland.
And while our government dysfunction continues to grow, one thing remained sacrosanct. When a Supreme Court justice dies, the president gets to fill the seat. Until Mitch McConnell said, "Fuck that new rule, fuck you." Garland never even got a hearing. So when Biden got elected, the Democrats said, "Hey, wouldn't it be funny as payback if we gave Garland the Attorney General job?" And that's how we got Attorney General Barney Fife.
So it's worthwhile pointing that out because, again, it was almost like a double standard helped beget additional double standards. So yes, in 2016, conservative Justice Antonin Scalia died when President Obama was in office. And the Constitution vests the power to fill Supreme Court vacancies with the president, with the advice and consent of the Senate. But there was a Republican majority in the Senate. Mitch McConnell, who has been legendarily obstructionist during the Obama administration, did not want to allow Barack Obama to fill Scalia's vacancy. Merrick Garland was a non-controversial choice, widely respected by both sides, and was considered a centrist judge. So it's not like he was replacing Scalia with, a communist or anything like that. And because McConnell knew that if Garland got a hearing, he would probably pass with an overwhelming bipartisan vote, McConnell just refused to have a hearing. And so for about a year, he refused to allow President Obama to fill the vacancy, saying it's an election year and the next president needs to fill it. And then, of course, this is important, in 2020, when the same thing happened, when Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg died during the Trump administration, Mitch McConnell, who was in control of the Senate, reversed his double standard. He created a new rule for Obama, then reversed it and said, actually, it is an election year, but we are going to let our Republican president fill the vacancy. Thus, Mitch McConnell is a hypocrite multiple times over. But as Bill Maher points out, this is a major reason why President Biden made Merrick Garland the Attorney General, almost like a hey, listen, we kind of screwed you or allowed you to get screwed over for a Supreme Court job. We'll make you Attorney General, and it will also stick it to Republicans because now you're also put in a powerful federal role. But as Bill Maher suggests, that may have backfired. So in this next clip, then they get more into the double standards in the justice system and in the Department of Justice in particular.
It's so interesting. When it comes time for Republicans to appoint a special prosecutor, they always appoint a Republican. And when it comes time for Democrats to appoint one, they also appoint a Republican. A Democrat hasn't served as a special prosecutor in a major investigation since Watergate. Somehow the rule became it has to be a Republican or it's not fair. A Dudley Do-Right type, like Mueller or James Comey. Remember him? A Boy Scout, they said. Yeah, he was a Boy Scout, all right. He gave me a knot in the stomach. Because he threw the presidency to Trump by making a big announcement 11 days before the election that he was reopening the case into Hillary's emails, and then found nothing. But the FBI was also investigating the Trump campaign's constant contacts with Russian nationals at the same time, over 140 of them. But that he kept secret. Weird, huh?
Again, just a great recitation of the facts, and it's really important because people tend to forget this. there is apparently just this unspoken rule that only Republicans are allowed to investigate anybody. Republicans investigate Democrats, and Republicans also investigate Republicans. It's an inexplicably partisan and irrational double standard. There's no reason why Democrats can't investigate Republicans or Democrats can't investigate Democrats, right? Why can't we play by a single standard? Why do we constantly have to grade Republicans on a curve? They obviously, in bad faith, do it, right? They, of course, want the members of their own party to investigate themselves because it increases the likelihood that the investigation will be solved or it will lead to an acquittal or an exoneration of some kind. But we, for whatever reason, those of us who are Democrats, we say, no, well, okay, just because they're going to act in bad faith, I suppose we'll play the game of politics on an even harder difficulty for no reason. There is no constitutional requirement which says that Democrats have to be investigated by Republicans and Republicans get to investigate themselves and Democrats. It makes no sense. And it's also good to point out that even James Comey, who obviously Donald Trump hated because he fired him as FBI director because he thought Comey was insufficiently loyal. It's true that even then, I mean, some people try to celebrate Comey now, but there was a double standard too. Both Secretary Clinton and Donald Trump were under investigation by the FBI at the time of the 2016 election. But Comey only felt comfortable disclosing publicly, days before the election, that Clinton was under investigation. And again, by the way, people say, well, it was Russiagate, the Russian collusion thing was a hoax. Collusion was a media narrative. There's no legal, it's conspiracy is the legal charge. And there were many illegal, unethical ties between Donald Trump's campaign and his administration and Russian actors. So there was considerable substance to the Russia investigation by Robert Mueller, or that was eventually carried out, after Comey left. But the genesis of it began under Comey. Why expose what Hillary Clinton was under investigation and then saying, actually, we don't find anything that rises to a criminal offense, but conceal what's going on for Trump? And it's worth remembering that James Comey, the former FBI director, has been a lifelong Republican. We haven't had a Democratic FBI director in decades or ever, perhaps. So again, just really important to expose that double standard. One more clip from Bill Maher.
4 months after Trump left office, the National Archives began asking him to return the documents he illegally took with him. And after being ignored for 9 months, they passed the case off to Garland, who should have sent the FBI to Mar-a-Lago the next day, but didn't for another 6 months. Joe Biden also had documents at his private residence. But again, by bending over backwards to be fair to the Republican, the Democrat got fucked. Garland chose again with this, Trump-appointed Republican as special counsel for Joe Biden, as he did later for Hunter Biden. And the upshot in the files cases was to make it look like Biden and Trump were equally guilty, which was not true. Biden returned the documents immediately and cooperated fully. So why the need to appoint a special counsel at all? Oh, yes, optics. But of course, the optics wound up being that while Biden was totally exonerated, the Republican counsel took the opportunity to say that the reason Biden wasn't guilty was that he was too much of a senile, feeble, confused shell of a former man who poops his pants and can't remember his kids' names. With Biden, Garland appointed a special prosecutor instantly. With Trump, it took 20 months. 20 months.
So again, the full monologue is really good, but I want to point out to this particular excerpt as well. Obviously, they're referring to the classified documents cases between Donald Trump and President Biden. So again, it's important to point out that Merrick Garland, yes, immediately appointed a special counsel to investigate President Biden the moment that Biden found the documents and turned them over voluntarily. Okay, he walked through the process there of how Donald Trump illegally took the documents, that the National Archives and the FBI worked with him proactively and quietly because they didn't want to prosecute him. It's not like they immediately pounced, even though they technically could have. They chose not to. They showed grace. They showed deference to a former president. Trump lied about the documents. He obstructed justice, or at least he's been charged with it. There's credible evidence that he did. And so the FBI and the National Archives slow-walked it. Garland slow-walked it. But when it comes to Biden, he immediately pounces, even though Biden didn't obstruct justice. Biden was the one who volunteered it. They didn't know Biden had documents. They may have never found out. Biden actually did the right thing. And so again, the double standard. Republicans are given all the rope and discretion in the world. Democrats are given none, even by fellow Democrats or Democratic appointees. It's an irrational, indefensible double standard, which Republicans never reciprocate. It'd be one thing if the standard was, listen, if we're Democrats, we're going to, hold our own to a much higher standard and give the opposition some slack. That might be defensible if Republicans did the same thing. If Republicans held Republicans to ruthless standards and gave Democrats some slack, and that's how we balanced it out. When you're dealing with your own, you hold your own to strict standards, you cut the other side some slack. If both sides did it, maybe that would make sense, but that's not what happens. And as Bill Maher points out, Robert Hur took the opportunity to use egregious language in his declination decision when he explained he wasn't prosecuting President Biden. And Republicans ran with it. And as Congressman Adam Schiff pointed out in the Robert Hur testimony hearing, he's like, you had to have known. Even if you needed to explain why you weren't charging President Biden, fair enough. But why did you have to use such gratuitous language? And by the way, career prosecutors, former DOJ officials, Alan Dershowitz, even conservative attorneys, conservative commentators have pointed out that Robert Hur used unusually egregious language in describing President Biden's mental state. But he also included in there that it wasn't the only reason. It wasn't the only reason. It wasn't the only reason that he chose not to charge President Biden. That this idea that Biden could present himself as this doddering, well-intentioned man with, a flawed memory. That's not the only reason that Robert Hur chose not to prosecute the president. He also said he just couldn't make the case beyond all reasonable doubt, and there were other innocent explanations as to why Biden had classified documents. And Robert Hur also pointed out in his declination decision that Donald Trump was objectively worse. He's like, listen, there are going to be comparisons between this situation and the Trump investigation. But based on the facts at our disposal, Donald Trump did a lot worse. He obstructed justice. He lied every chance he could. He wasn't cooperative, whereas President Biden was. But what matters is Garland is holding Biden and the Democrats to a much higher standard than Trump and the Republicans. And we know why, because we actually have the reporting. We talked about this. There was a great expose about a year ago from the Washington Post in which DOJ officials were interviewed. This was this blockbuster bombshell of a report, which said that many of them felt that Garland was deliberately slow-walking any action against Donald Trump and prominent Republicans because he didn't want to be seen as partisan, which in and of itself is a partisan political consideration. I understand if you err too much on the side of, listen, I'm not going to act, even though I believe this person may have committed a crime, I believe we can prove it, but if I act, it'll be seen as political, it'll be seen as partisan. That in and of itself is a political partisan decision. There's just no two ways around. And by the way, Merrick Garland, what have the optics concerns gotten you? It'd be one thing if Garland could say, listen, my decision to take my time with this, to hold Democrats to a higher standard, to give Republicans all the benefit of the doubt and the slack in the world, is that we're slowly coaxing them to believe in the justice system again. Except that's not happening. Poll after poll after poll shows that Republicans hate Merrick Garland. They hate the justice system because it's not about principle. It's about outcome. The fact that Trump was charged at all and that Democrats have not been prosecuted in their mind is proof that the justice system is rigged. You cannot please these people. The only way Merrick Garland could please Republicans and win Republicans over is if he were to drop all charges against Donald Trump and prosecute Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and President Biden. That's it. That's the only thing that would win that side over. They have outcome-driven motivations to not believe Merrick Garland and to reject any attempt by him to be seen as apolitical. They are ideologically invested in seeing him as a political actor. So it was all for nothing. And as a consequence of Merrick Garland slow walking all this, Donald Trump may never face trial for his actions. And voters are probably not going to be able to make an informed decision because these trials won't make it, or these cases won't make it to trial before the election. That's not all because of Merrick Garland. Much of it has to do with Judge Aileen Cannon, a Trump appointee in Florida, presiding over the documents case for Trump. Much of it has to do with the United States Supreme Court bending over backwards to accommodate him. But Merrick Garland has also played a role. So it's my opinion that if President Biden wins a second term, his first action should be to fire Merrick Garland, who is a well-intentioned, good man, but he has a judicial temperament. But he's not a judge. When you're the United States Attorney General or the Attorney General of the United States, you're not a judge. You are a prosecutor. You have to have a prosecutorial mindset. You have to have an aggressive, ruthless mindset, not reckless, not an inquisitor in a witch hunt. But by definition, you are the prosecutor. You are the adversary in an adversarial system. That's something that Democrats just don't get. And it has to change. There's no reason, none, to adhere to that double standard. It's stupid, it's irrational, and it has only hurt us without merit and helped them without merit. Great monologue by Bill Maher. Let me know what you think in the comments.